What's up, Dynasty owners? I'm Matt the Jerk here with your weekly video breakdown. Today we're going to be talking about the New York Giants. So we're going to be staying in the NFC East. We're going to break down the division a little bit since I didn't get to it last week. So as most of you know, the NFC East was a pretty rough division. It's putting it about as nice as I can. They were by far the worst division in football. Washington football team won the division with a 7-9 record. It's only memory that team has finished below 500 and actually won their division. They had the worst total wins of any division. They had 23, and the second closest was 27. That was the AFC South. So a very poor division. They look to hopefully make that a little better this year. Season broke down like this, though. So football team, they finished 7-9. They were limited in the wild card playoffs. They're the only team, obviously, from this division that made the playoffs. The Giants and the Cowboys were both 6-10, and the Eagles finished 4-11-1. So let's talk about all of them individually. Football team finished 7-9. Despite losing 2 of their last 3 games, they did sneak into the playoffs. So here's some of the highlights for them. Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic, they both finished as top 20 running backs. So Gibson holds $1.2 million salary. McKissic is $1.6. So very impressive that they both finished as top. Terry McLaurin, just under $1 million. He finished as a top 20 wide receiver. Very impressive. And then Logan Thomas actually finished as tight end 4. That kind of surprised me. I think this offense will take a step forward in 2021. They got Ryan Fitzpatrick now, who's going to be leading the team. He's a more than capable quarterback. He makes mistakes. Most quarterbacks do, but he's not afraid to get the ball to his best players and definitely stretch the field. So I'm excited to watch him. Bold prediction, actually, is I predict them to repeat as the division winner. Next, the Giants. So if we're looking for a positive spin, there really wasn't much. But the one thing I can say that they started 2020 with 1-7 record, and over the next 8 games, so the second half of the season, they finished 5-8. So that's something to build on, something they can at least take into the offseason. Obviously, the Saquon injury was kind of an insurmountable task to defeat. Saquon makes right at $7.8 million. And I talked about the CMC injury quite a bit in the offseason, but I compared the 2 injuries kind of in the same way. So both players were workhorse backs for their team. Both players missed an overwhelming majority of the 2020 season. And they both, look to rebound in the 2021 season. They're both projected to be 12 this season. So there is a major difference, and I've highlighted this in the past. So Saquon's injury, it was incredibly devastating, no doubt. Like, he was out for the whole season. There was nothing to do. But it kind of provided a little more clarity when you do know that he's out for the whole season. So let me explain that. Like, you're done with him. Like, that's it. You're not going to be playing him the rest of the season. You know that. But it's almost a time to move on. You get a little bit of close, opposed to the CMC injury where you kind of get strung out. Yes, he played 2 more games than Saquon, but you never have that closure. Like, am I able to let him go? And obviously in Dynasty, you're not going to let him go. This is more for redraft. But am I able to just to take him out of my mind and just move on with my season and look forward to the 2021 season? It was tough. It was definitely a fantasy headache. So both those players look to rebound. Saquon, actually, the early news is that he's not going to be ready for the start of the season, ready for training camps, or probably so we're going to keep an eye on him as season closer. We're only about a month away now. Right at about a month away from the season starting. So much like the Giants and the Panthers, the Cowboys were dealt a pretty tough hand in 2020. Scott makes $40 million a year. He played only 4.5 games. He suffered a compound fracture and dislocation to his right ankle. Very devastating. There's no way he was going to come back. He was cruising to a top 3 quarterback finish prior to the injury. It's really upsetting that we can't see how that season would have ended. Here are his first 4 games in 2020 last year. This is how incredible pace he was on. 22.3, 49.3, 39.2, and 50.3. So those are his fantasy points last year before his injury. Very impressive. Unreal pace that he was on. And then finally, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. They finished last in the NFC East. I don't see much changing for finish last. I think they're going to take baby steps forward, but they actually weren't terrible in a lot of the metrics that you look at for team efficiency. So they were middle of the road as far as defense efficiency goes. The defense, wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't, bottom of the NFL. Terrible in rushing yards per game, believe it or not, even though Miles Sanders didn't have what we would consider a great season. I believe they were ninth. They finished ninth in terms of rushing yards per game, so pretty healthy there. The problem mostly lied with the passing production. We know that they don't have very many passing, not many wide receivers last year. They were actually 28th in the NFL in passing yards per game. So blame that partially on the quarterback play, Carson Wentz, and then that led into Jalen Hurts. But whatever you say about it, hopefully they'll be able to take a few steps forward with Hurts, being in his, another year under his belt of practice. So I still predict them, like I said, to finish last in division for the second year in a row. So let's talk about the New York Giants receiver contract breakdown. So the one thing I wanted to talk about, I really wanted to compare all these players and talk about who we would take first if we were doing a redraft, or really like even trading for a player for it. So who do you think finished highest in 2020 among all New York Giant wide receivers? The answer is Sterling Shepard. He had 162.5 fantasy points. Not great for number one on their team. But what about this question? Who do you think is projected to finish highest in 2021 among all New York Giants wide receivers? The answer should be pretty obvious. It's the player they traded for, Kenny Golladay. The player that they not traded for, but acquired in the offseason. It's not surprising Kenny Golladay is going to be the most talented wide receiver on that team. People forget that he's only 27, is getting closer to, that declination line of wide receivers, but he's still got a few more years before he gets to that point. So we have first to finish is going to be Kenny Golladay. Second projected is going to be Sterling Shepard. Third is actually Kadarius Toney, the rookie, which I find, a little odd. I wouldn't project him to finish third. I think he'll be fourth. I'm not sure he's going to get too much playing time to start the season, maybe not even the whole season. And then finishing in fourth is going to be Darius Slayton. So the question begs to be answered, which of these four is the greatest value? I think it's clear that Golladay is going to be the best receiver on the team. He's probably going to finish 2021 with the most fantasy points, but with an $18 million cap, where's that line? Where do we draw that line? And so I kind of broke down, if you look at my article, it looks at a little bit closer, but broke down dynasty dollar per fantasy point. And you can't really look at Galladay's or Toney's in 2020 just because Golladay missed so many games. Toney didn't even play, so it's not even worth looking at. Sterling Shepard was 63,000 and was right at 5,000. So Slayton seems to be the obvious value pick, but he just doesn't get that many fantasy points. Where's your cutoff for this player's a great value, but if they're getting 90 fantasy points, that's not really helping you. So I looked at 2021 dynasty dollar per fantasy point, and it shakes up the exact same way. We have Kenny Golladay at the least valuable, 73,000. Sterling Shepard, 60,000. Kadarius Toney, 21,000, and then Darius Slayton at 4,000. So that's the way it would shake up. You'd think Slayton would be the biggest value, and that might even be true. I'm not going to say that he's not the biggest value I would take first. So if we're looking at a purely 2021 standpoint, which I know I don't do very often, but if you're looking at just 2021 with Dynasty owner and the salaries, I would take Golladay first. Being that it's, he's really young. Yes, he's on a new team. Yes, he costs $18 million per year, but it kind of goes back to my strategy before where I'll pay for late, high salary wide receivers, especially if I can get those early running backs, those cheap running backs. So I would rank them for the 2021 owner: Golladay, Shepard, Slayton, Toney. I don't see Toney playing too much this season. As we look forward throughout his career, I think it might, it's got a chance to be pretty bright, but not for this season. And then as we look forward, the next three, how would I rank them? Well, I would still have Golladay first. I think that after this contract, he's got 4 years on this contract, then we might start talking about maybe not the end of a career, the falling off point. But as far as for all these receivers, I would take Golladay first, Toney second. I think, especially with his, how do I say it? Especially with his unknown talent, that we haven't seen in the NFL. It's very hopeful, that a lot of dynasty owners look for when they draft a player. So he has a lot of talent. I'll say that much. So we have Golladay, Toney, Shepard, and Slayton as we look out the next 3-4 years. And like I said, I gave the edge to Toney mainly because of his youth. and just general upside that he brings, that he brought into the draft, which is why the Giants took him. And that's pretty much all I want to talk about. Just talk about those 4 wide receivers and break that down a little bit. So I appreciate everybody listening, and take care. Be safe.